Welcome to the last video of our Geometry International Honors Summer Assignment Help video series. This video will just be a short little video just to remind you of some arithmetic skills that you'll need to perform on the summer assignment. First, let's review the order of operations that you should follow when you're simplifying an expression and there's a lot of arithmetic that needs to be done, and you need to decide which part of the problem you should do first. So PEMDAS is a good way to remember order of operations. You've probably seen this before. The P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses. So if there are any parentheses or any other kind of grouping symbol, make sure you do the arithmetic inside those parentheses first. The E in PEMDAS stands for exponents. So if you have any powers, you would take care of that next. Okay, the M and the D stand for multiplication and division. I guess I should write the whole thing out. Multiplication and division. Okay, and I'm going to kind of group those together because multiplication, division, one is not more important than the other. What you would decide to do if you saw multiplication and division in the same step is that you would work that out from left to right. And the same thing is true for A and S, which stands for addition and subtraction. Addition and subtraction happens last. Subtraction. Okay, those happen last, okay? But again, addition is listed before subtraction, but it's not more important than subtraction. Addition and subtraction carry the same weight, if you will. When you need to decide whether to add or subtract, again, what determines that is work the problem from left to right. All right, so let's do a couple of examples to see how PEMDAS works. So in this first example, I see some parentheses, so we should do the arithmetic inside those parentheses first. So I need to subtract a couple of fractions, and to do that, I will need a like denominator. So I'm going to rewrite the problem from left to right, but I'm going to, inside those parentheses, I'm going to get a like denominator, which would be 8. So I'm going to rewrite that 3/4 as 6/8 minus 1/8, and then don't forget about the division by 1/3. Okay, now I can do the arithmetic inside the parentheses. 6/8 minus 1/8 would be 5/8. Okay, so now you see we are down to, we have multiplication and division. So which one gets done first? Well, we would do the multiplication first because it's the leftmost operation. So I'm going to multiply 3/5 times 5/8. Now you might want to cancel out that common 5. Let's go ahead and do that. Reduce before we multiply. And we would have 3/8 divided by 1/3. And before we go any further, I just want to remind you of a property. How do we multiply by a fraction? You probably recall learning this in grade school. If I have a fraction or anything, and I'm dividing by a fraction, like A over B divided by C over D, remember that's the same thing as A divided by B, and then we're going to change this multiplication to, we're going to change this division to multiplication, and then we're going to flip that second fraction. In other words, division by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying it by its reciprocal. The reciprocal is what you get when you take a fraction and you flip it upside down. So this 3/8 divided by 1/3 would be the same thing then as 3/8 times the reciprocal of 1/3, which is 3/1. So now I can multiply the numerators and then multiply the denominators and get my final answer of 9/8. That doesn't need to be reduced any, so we can stop there. In example 2, you'll see that we have a choice between addition and division, and given that choice, we would do any multiplication and division before we did any addition. So let's take care of this division, and you'll remember from our last example that dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite this problem as 2/3 plus 1/2, I'm going to change the division sign, I'm going to change to multiplication, and then I'm going to take this 4/3 and flip it over to get the reciprocal, so that would be 3/4. All right, so now we have a choice between multiplication and addition. So multiplication would happen next. So let's multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So we'd have 2/3 plus 1 times 3 is 3 on top, and 2 times 4 is 8 on the bottom. And so now we can go ahead and do that addition. Last but not least, we do need to get a like denominator. The least common denominator of 3 and 8 would be 24. It'd be their least common multiple. So to get that common denominator, if I want a 24 right here, I'm going to have to multiply 3 by 8 to make that happen. But remember, if you multiply the denominator by 8, we also have to multiply the numerator by 8. And then to get that LCD, that least common denominator of 24 here, I'm going to need to multiply by 3. So you also need to multiply the numerator by 3. So let's rewrite that problem then as 16 over 24 plus 9 over 24. Now that the denominators are alike, we can add those together. How many 24ths do we have? We would have 25 24ths. Now I'm going to leave that answer like that. That's a perfectly fine answer. We don't need to reduce it any. If you prefer, you could write it as a mixed number, which would be, 1 and 1 over 24. Okay, either of those answers would be considered correct. And in our last example, we're going to do a problem that has a lot of multiplication and division. So I just want to show you that you start working from left to right until you're finished multiplying and dividing. So let's start with the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to take 1/2 and divide it by 3. You might want to write that 3 over 1 because remember that division by a number is the same thing as multiplying it by its reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite this as 1/2 times the reciprocal of 3, which is 1/3, and then times the 3/4, and then divided by the 2/3. So now, how do we decide what to do next? We just go from left to right. So let's do the leftmost operation first. So that would be 1/2 times 1/3, which gives us 1/6. And then times 3/4 divided by 2/3. Now we keep moving from left to right, so let's do the next leftmost operation, which is 1/6 times 3/4. So that would give us 3 over 24. Now I realize you could have reduced here. We have a common factor of 3 here, but I'm just going to wait and do any reducing at the end. And then since well, I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite the problem. 3/24 divided by 2/3. And then the last thing we'll do is that division. And 3/24 divided by 2/3 is the same thing as 3/24 times the reciprocal, which is 3/2. All right, and now we can multiply numerators and denominators. We get 9 over 48. And 9 and 48 have a common factor of 3, so I'm going to reduce this answer to 3 over 16, and that will be our final answer. Okay, so I hope these little reminders of some arithmetic you might need to do this year have been helpful, and I hope the entire video series has been helpful to you and has helped you have success on the summer assignment. And as I've said in the other videos, if you still need more help, please don't hesitate to ask me at school. I'll be glad to help you. And best of luck on your summer assignment.